They were once a content family of three, leading a peaceful life in this small home. Yet in just 4 short years, an unimaginable series of tragedies claimed all 3 of their lives. The house that once echoed with laughter has now become a source of dread for neighbors. Many believe it has been cursed by evil, shrouding the place in an eerie atmosphere. However, as the investigation deepened, a dark conspiracy gradually came to light, revealing the horrifying truth behind these mysterious calamities. So what truly happened back in 2013? You're watching True Crime in the World, where we explore the most enigmatic cases and the most gripping stories you may have never heard before. As always, before we delve into today's mysterious incident, don't hesitate to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications to support our channel. Now, let's take a closer look at what occurred. Situated on the western shore of Lake Ontario, adjacent to the bustling city of Toronto, Mississauga ranks among Canada's largest and most modern municipalities. Teeming with a dense population, it's constantly buzzing with vitality. Amid Mississauga's tranquil streets, at 3635 Pine Path, stands a contemporary villa featuring soaring glass windows and a strikingly slanted roof. This very house provides the backdrop to our story, and for convenience, we'll refer to it simply as House 3635. House 3635 was the home of Caleb Harrison, a warm-hearted 40-year-old man. His 2 children meant everything to him, so much so that he tattooed their names on his shoulder, a constant reminder of his devotion. After his marriage collapsed, he poured all his energy into raising and nurturing his kids. In 2010, he officially became their legal guardian. A model father, Caleb showered his children with affection. Outside of work, he spent every possible moment with them, engaging in fun activities and helping with their studies. His gentle, caring demeanor left a lasting impression on his children. On the afternoon of August 22, 2013, Caleb happily took his daughter to watch a football match. That evening, after sharing his excitement with his girlfriend over the phone, he switched it off and went to sleep, unaware it would be his last night alive. The next morning, when Caleb failed to show up for work, his coworkers grew concerned as calls and messages went unanswered. Worried, they headed directly to his house. The housekeeper was likewise in the dark, mentioning she hadn't seen him leave his room since early morning. They forced open the bedroom door and were confronted with a horrifying sight. Caleb lay motionless on his bed, his face deathly pale. The police were summoned immediately. The autopsy revealed 2 deep scratch marks on his chest, a swollen right knuckle, and multiple bruises on his face and neck. Evidently, he had been strangled. His hyoid bone was fractured and his laryngeal cartilage severely damaged. The approximate time of death was around midnight. As the paramedics departed the house, they felt an indescribable sense of dread, as though they had encountered something similar here before. Caleb's sudden death shook the entire neighborhood. House 3635 became the center of countless rumors, and many soon believed a sinister curse haunted the property. A ghastly truth emerged. Caleb wasn't the only victim of House 3635. His parents, Bill and Bridget, had also died under mysterious circumstances in that very home. Within 4 short years, death had claimed the entire family, fueling belief in a lingering curse over the house. But was 3635 Pine Path truly cursed, or were people's suspicions misguided? Let's rewind to the home's original owners, Caleb's parents, Bill and Bridget, to learn more. Born in 1946 in Ontario, Bridget stood out from an early age for her bold personality and free spirit. With striking looks and a natural flair for acting, she quickly became a rising star on television. During a TV production, Bridget met Bill, a man of color blessed with a radiant smile and a keen intellect. Their love blossomed despite society's prejudices. Their interracial relationship faced fierce opposition, yet love helped them transcend every barrier. For Bridget, Bill was more than a handsome man. He was her soulmate. His intelligence, humor, and kindness won her over completely. In defiance of societal disapproval, Bridget and Bill took each other's hand in 1969, deciding to build a family in Mississauga, Ontario. Both worked tirelessly, Bridget becoming a devoted teacher and Bill a well-liked salesman. Their life was filled with joy and love. Although they yearned for a child, health constraints kept them from conceiving. Driven by their love for children, they welcomed Caleb, a 6-month-old boy, into their home. In 1975, the little family moved to House 3635 and began a new life bursting with laughter. Caleb grew up in his parents' nurturing care, becoming their greatest source of happiness. From a young age, Caleb battled Tourette syndrome, marked by sudden tics and noises that led to teasing from other children. Yet, with unwavering determination, he conquered these hurdles. As he matured, his symptoms gradually subsided, giving way to a vigorous, energetic young man. After high school, he chose a humble career in transportation. Although the pay wasn't great, Caleb was content and took pride in his work. Caleb's family was financially comfortable thanks to his parents' unwavering hard work. Bill rose from a regular employee to a brilliant manager, while Bridget earned a respected position on the school board. Their achievements provided Caleb with the solid support he needed to pursue his own ambitions. In 2000, at a Barbie doll shop, 27-year-old Caleb happened upon Melissa, a 19-year-old who had just finished high school. Their eyes met, and Caleb was instantly drawn to her gentle beauty and radiant smile. Melissa, fresh from a painful breakup, longed for calm in her life. Caleb's arrival was like a soothing breeze, comforting her wounded heart. With his sincerity and warmth, he gradually won Melissa over. He picked her up from work daily, and those thoughtful gestures brought their hearts closer together. After just a few months of dating, they chose to move in together. Their wedding took place amid warmth and happiness, and they began a new life in Georgetown, about a 30-minute drive from House 3635, Caleb's parents' home. Both cherished children, and their joy doubled with the birth of twins. It seemed like a blissful family life, yet small disagreements began piling up, straining their bond. Arguments flared regularly, often sparked by the smallest issues. In 2005, after a heated dispute, Melissa called the police and Caleb was briefly detained. This incident was the final straw that ended their marriage. Caleb returned to House 3635 to live with his parents, while Melissa retained custody of their twins. Yet life after the divorce was far from peaceful. They constantly clashed over custody matters, with Melissa lodging baseless accusations that tarnished Caleb's reputation as well as his family's. During this period, both Caleb and Melissa ventured into new relationships. Caleb dated Kalinda, an energetic and youthful woman, while Melissa met Chris on social media, a man who showed her great sympathy and support. Their bond intensified quickly, leading to an engagement even though Melissa's divorce from Caleb was not yet finalized. However, Caleb's life took a devastating turn. After a night out with friends, he drove under the influence and caused a serious accident that killed one person and injured 3 others. On March 9, 2009, Caleb received an 18-month prison sentence for his mistake. During his incarceration, partial custody of the 2 children went to their grandparents, Bill and Bridget. On a night in April, specifically the 16th, Bridget returned home after a tiring school meeting to find the house unusually dark. She called out for her husband, but got no reply. Eventually, she discovered Bill lying motionless on the first-floor bathroom floor, showing no sign of life. Bridget immediately called the police and forensic experts to the scene. Following the examination, a renowned pathologist named Charles concluded Bill had died from a stroke triggered by a fall, resulting in a fractured sternum. Bruises on his face and neck were attributed to the impact, and a necklace that became entangled around his neck. Nonetheless, Bridget refused to accept these findings, insisting her husband had always been healthy, with no history of heart conditions. Despite her doubts, the police accepted the forensic evidence and closed the case. On June 15, 2009, Caleb was released after serving his sentence. His father's sudden death had left him deeply shaken and fueled unresolved suspicions. Yet because Bill's remains were cremated, any potential evidence was erased, forcing Caleb to bear both his grief and doubts in silence. Tragically, the misfortunes didn't end there. On April 21, 2010, another shocking event unfolded. Caleb's 8-year-old son returned home to find his grandmother Bridget motionless at the bottom of the stairs. Panicked, he ran next door for help. When the police and forensic team arrived, they discovered Bridget had died, bearing peculiar injuries, bruises on her face, eyes, and neck, as well as injuries to her limbs and several broken ribs. The autopsy confirmed she had been strangled, while the additional wounds could have resulted from a fall or an attack. However, investigators could not definitively conclude the exact cause of Bridget's death. With 2 mysterious deaths in the family within just 2 years, the police suspected these weren't accidental. Caleb, adopted, the sole heir to a wealthy household, became the primary suspect. In particular, his ex-wife Melissa accused him of violence and claimed a strained relationship with his mother, heightening investigators' suspicions. Nevertheless, after a thorough inquiry, the police found no evidence implicating Caleb. Nonetheless, suspicion continued to loom over Caleb. Having lost both his adoptive father and mother, he became the focus of public scrutiny. The police theorized a killer might be at large, and that these incidents were connected. Despite rampant rumors of a curse on House 3635, the authorities prioritized objective leads. They revisited both crime scenes, re-examined physical evidence, and found no sign of outside intrusion. Hence, the investigation started focusing on ties within the Harrison family. Melissa and her current husband, Chris, emerged as prime suspects. Their fraught relationship with Caleb, especially an ongoing custody dispute, had previously heightened familial tensions. They had even been accused of kidnapping the children, further fueling suspicions that they harbored a motive. In April 2010, custody of the two children was officially awarded to Caleb. However, barely 2 weeks later, tragedy struck again, giving Melissa the chance to reclaim custody and become the sole heir to the family estate, including House 3635. This abrupt change aroused significant suspicion about Melissa's motives. During the investigation, police came across Bridget's diary. Inside, they found an email Melissa had sent to the couple back in 2008, which revealed her hostility toward Caleb and his family. She asserted that if Caleb couldn't care for the children himself, then she alone was fit to do so. This discovery further deepened the suspicion that Melissa might have a motive for the crimes. Additionally, investigators learned that after Caleb was arrested for driving under the influence, Melissa's husband Chris had made relentless efforts to smear Caleb on social media. Chris's posts were rife with insults, depicting Caleb as a villain in the public eye. His conduct demonstrated the couple's deep-rooted animosity toward Caleb. During their inquiries, police uncovered two suspicious coincidences. First, in mid-April 2009, Bill had planned a lengthy trip with his two grandchildren. This information was shared with their teachers, and Melissa also knew about it. Strikingly, just 2 days after making those arrangements, Bill died suddenly. Second, soon afterward, Melissa and Chris abducted the children. While Bridget was reeling from her husband's death, Caleb was serving his sentence, and the grandchildren were missing. Melissa and Chris abruptly vanished from Mississauga. Despite a nationwide alert, no leads surfaced about their whereabouts. It was later discovered that they traveled through various cities before settling in Nova Scotia, where they rented a home, changed their identities, and led a reclusive existence. This second coincidence greatly intensified suspicions. Right after Melissa's arrest and release on bail, the court date for the child abduction case was set for April 22, 2010. However, just 1 day prior, on April 21st, Bridget, a key witness in the case, died under inexplicable circumstances. The events were so eerily timed that police suspected a third party might be orchestrating it all. Although investigators lacked direct proof implicating Melissa and Chris, they did uncover suspicious leads. Forensic tests showed the DNA of both individuals present under Caleb's fingernails. Yet, a database comparison yielded no matching records. This discovery only compounded the case's complexity. Seeking further evidence, the police launched a covert operation. Melissa's phone was closely monitored, her vehicle outfitted with a tracking device, and every movement she made stayed on the police's radar. Meanwhile, investigators also kept Chris under tight surveillance, collecting biological samples such as discarded water bottles for DNA testing. Even Chris's household trash was not exempt from the authorities' meticulous scrutiny. Eventually, through persistent investigation, the police achieved a critical breakthrough. During an extensive search, they discovered a water bottle, a new pair of shoes, and a pair of black rubber gloves at a location tied to Chris. DNA samples collected from these items matched both Chris and Caleb. Moreover, bank transaction records and surveillance footage from a Walmart store indicated that Chris had purchased the shoes on the very night of the crime. Realizing they were under surveillance, Melissa and Chris hurriedly left Mississauga for Londonderry, Nova Scotia. There, they found work on a remote farm and tried to begin a new life. The solitude of this rural setting, however, made obtaining a search warrant for their residence more challenging. Eventually, after numerous efforts, authorities obtained a warrant to search Melissa's home in early October. Though the couple had attempted to erase all traces, certain essential items, such as a laptop, phone, and USB drive remained. Analysis of these devices revealed suspicious details tied to their internet searches. Their search queries on Melissa and Chris's electronic devices further illuminated their motives and methods. On February 11, 2010, just a few months before the crimes, they researched procedures for transferring custody when parents die. Following that, in April 2010, they looked up how long someone could survive after suffocation. In May of the same year, they explored techniques to detect phone taps. By 2011, their queries became increasingly specific, covering various toxins, how to make poison, and even ways to commit murder without leaving a trace. All this digital evidence, combined with physical items gathered at the crime scene, gave police a comprehensive view of the case. There was no longer any doubt. Melissa and Chris were indeed the culprits behind this horrifying string of murders. At last, after a lengthy investigation, the police gathered enough evidence to make arrests. In January 2014, a special task force of 6 police vehicles surrounded Melissa and Chris's new residence in Nova Scotia. Both were apprehended and charged with first-degree murder. During separate interrogations, Melissa adamantly denied any wrongdoing and refused to cooperate with the police. However, under the weight of irrefutable evidence, and after 13 straight hours of questioning, Chris finally bowed his head and confessed to his crimes. Chris stated that on the night of the murder, he had sneaked into Caleb's home and attacked him. Furthermore, he admitted to killing Bridget. He maintained that Melissa had no knowledge of his plans and that he alone carried out the murders. Yet the police remained dubious of his account. In order to test Chris's statement and uncover the truth, investigators arranged a covert operation. They orchestrated a meeting between Melissa and Chris and secretly planted recording devices in the room. When the pair came face to face, Chris attempted to take full responsibility, hoping to reduce his wife's sentence. Melissa, however, became furious and objected to his actions. She berated Chris as a fool and demanded to know why he would confess when the police lacked any evidence concerning Bridget's death. Their 30-minute conversation was recorded and became the most pivotal piece of evidence in the case, revealing that both of them were aware of the murders and had colluded to conceal their crimes. In September 2017, the murder trial was formally convened. Chris's trial proceeded relatively swiftly due to the abundance of concrete evidence stacked against him. At the scene of Caleb's murder, investigators collected large amounts of Chris's DNA on the victim's body and on items like rubber gloves and footwear. Moreover, the recorded conversation between Chris and Melissa served as the golden piece of evidence, exposing how both had conspired to carry out these heinous acts. Still, Chris attempted to justify his actions in court. He acknowledged killing Caleb but insisted it was a tragic accident. He claimed he originally only meant to teach Caleb a lesson, so he could have more time with the grandchildren, but that he used excessive force unintentionally, resulting in Caleb's death. During the trial concerning Bridget's death, Chris recanted his earlier statements, claiming he had lied initially to protect his wife. The prosecution, however, dismissed his new account, pointing out that previous evidence, including Chris's initial confession, the audio recordings, and forensic results, formed a cohesive, irrefutable proof of guilt. Ultimately, the jury found Chris guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, sentencing him to life imprisonment without parole for 25 years. The trial against Melissa was far more complex than Chris's. Although no direct physical evidence placed her at Caleb's murder scene, prosecutors presented a sturdy case based on motive and the recorded conversation. They asserted that Melissa was the ringleader, orchestrating and guiding. Regarding Bridget's death, however, the jury could not reach a guilty verdict for Melissa. The lack of direct evidence linking her to that crime led them to conclude that the case against her was insufficient. Ultimately, Melissa received a life sentence without parole for 25 years, convicted of aiding and abetting Caleb's murder. Although both Melissa and Chris were suspected of involvement in Bill's mysterious death, they avoided prosecution due to insufficient evidence and errors in the initial investigation. Chris's defense team effectively argued that the victim's fractured sternum might have arisen from the resuscitation process. Moreover, Bill's cremation made further investigation nearly impossible, creating a gap in the case that allowed the true perpetrator to remain unpunished. Though Melissa and Chris ultimately received life sentences for subsequent crimes, the victims' families remained dissatisfied with the investigation's outcome. They felt the police had failed in their duty, leaving a significant murder case unresolved. In particular, Caleb's relatives expressed profound disappointment with law enforcement. They believed that had officers conducted a thorough investigation from the start, it might have prevented the two later homicides. Indeed, right after Bill's death, the family repeatedly urged the police to scrutinize Melissa and Chris, the primary suspects, but their pleas went ignored. The authorities seemed to take no serious investigative steps, especially in collecting and analyzing forensic evidence, like DNA, even though the victim bore numerous wounds. Even the expertise of the forensic pathologists, notably the renowned Dr. Charles, was seriously called into question. Grave inaccuracies in Charles's forensic reports, he was later found lacking fundamental knowledge in the field, intensified the victim's family's disappointment, fueling skepticism about the impartiality of the entire investigative process. In 2005, a review by Ontario's Attorney General uncovered serious mistakes in at least 20 of 4 autopsies conducted by Charles. Some claim these errors were even worse than murder. With him having performed over 1,000 examinations, the number of cases potentially compromised by his blunders was incalculable. It was astonishing that such a flawed forensic expert was still trusted and relied upon for investigations. Faced with these shocking disclosures, the victims' relatives demanded a comprehensive, transparent investigation. The then chief of the Peel Police initiated an internal inquiry, but it mysteriously ceased after just a month. Though journalists posed numerous questions, no specific information was released. In 2016, an extensive investigation by the Toronto Star revealed an alarming situation within the Peel Police Department. According to their findings, since 2010, roughly 640 officers had been disciplined or otherwise sanctioned for misconduct, accounting for 13% of the force. Even more troubling, province-wide statistics in Ontario indicated a similar pattern, reflecting a high rate of disciplinary violations within law enforcement. These figures painted a grim picture of disorder in Canada's policing institutions at the time, suggesting that numerous additional cases of misconduct might still lie undiscovered or be actively concealed. In October 20, Nishan took over as chief of the Peel Police Department. Immediately upon taking office, he expressed distress over the horrifying murders involving Bill's family, also highlighting the serious investigative failings that spanned more than a decade. To rectify the situation, the Peel Police Department initiated wide-ranging reforms informed by community feedback and independent investigative reports. 2 officers directly tied to the case admitted to mistakes and took responsibility for their conduct. Simultaneously, forensic agencies reviewed and improved their procedures to prevent similar errors from recurring in the future. Both Melissa and Chris appealed after their convictions. While Chris's appeal was denied outright, Melissa's was granted due to major procedural errors in her prior trial, involving improper use of evidence. Nonetheless, the new proceedings remain unresolved. Freed on bail of $285,000 Canadian dollars, Melissa is presently under house arrest at her parents' residence with strict oversight. Notably, Melissa divorced Chris and remarried while in custody. She now lives with her new husband and 4 children, though details about child custody arrangements between her and Chris have not been disclosed. The house where the crime took place has changed owners and been fully renovated, but memories of its harrowing past still linger in the minds of local residents. What are your thoughts on this case? Feel free to share them in the comments below. And before you leave, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to follow the most riveting cases on true crime in the world.